80% of the fights at UFC 306 were decisions. Also, 80% of the fights at UFC 306 were fantastic. The only fights that left something to be desired were the co-main event and the main event, and that is always unfortunate because you want to end on a high note. But overall, I thought that UFC 306 was a good fight card. We had a couple of big upsets. We had a couple of absolute drag-em-out banger fights, and we have a couple of new champions as well. My name is Angelo. This is We Want Picks, and I'm going to recap the entire UFC 306 fight card. Before we talk about the fights, let's talk about the bets. I am up money. The winning streak continues. Here is every single premium bet that I put on the board. And I'm not up $1,000. I'm not up $1 million. I am up almost half a unit. But frankly, a win on a week like this is a win nonetheless. I hit the Esteban Ribovics money line, a plus 180 dog, that hit. The Diego Lopes money line, that hit. The Raul Rosas over 1.5, that hit. The Dumont Aldana and the Grasso Shevchenko over on their rounds also hit. I only missed 2 bets. That was the Alexa Grasso money line. We'll talk about that fight. And then Yazmin Jauregui. We'll talk about that fight as well. But the streak that we are on, the winning streak, week in and week out. I went 7-3 on picks. I put up a half of a unit, which is 13% ROI because I only put 3.75 units on the board. Overall, I'm good with tonight. Could it have been better? Of course. Could it have been worse? Yeah. Go check Twitter and tell me if it could have been worse. But I made some money. Hopefully, if you're a premium member, you made some money as well. WeWantPicks.com. Click Become a Member. It's only $10 for an entire month if you want to prepare for UFC Paris now. Again, up money, doing well. Things have been nice and shiny. Premium membership is more than just some copy-paste bets. We have tools like the data analyzer, the prop hunter, the line movement tracker, and a whole bunch of other stuff. It's freaking $10 for an entire month. I just gave you a half a unit last night. I gave you almost 6 units over the last 4 events. WeWantPicks.com. Click Become a Member at the top. Before I talk about the actual fights, I do want to talk about the arena and the experience. I was worried going into this that as a fan at home, we wouldn't get the full Sphere experience, but we did. It was awesome. We sat on the couch. There was like 6 of us. We sat on the couch, and every time they did one of the movies, and every time they did one of those drawn out shots and they had a drone flying around, we just could not stop saying, holy shit, that is incredible. Every new backdrop was insane. The stories, I could have done without the story. I really didn't care about the stories at all. Did anybody follow the plot lines of those stories? I don't think anybody gave a shit. Now, the visuals of those stories were spectacular. But the plot, nobody cares about that. The whole Dana White Easter egg thing, find the 5 Easter eggs, we'll give you 25 grand. There can't be a person on this planet that knows what the hell that was about. But either way, the visuals for a fan at home were great. We had completely new graphics. We had completely new backdrops. The color scheme was different. It felt awesome. It felt like an experience, and I am very happy they did it that way, and I wish they would do more themed pay-per-views. And I understand they can't go to the Sphere all the time because the amount of money that cost them was unreasonable. But they can change the graphics every now and then. They can theme out the colors and things like that for us at home. I thought that was great. It really locked us in. Overall, we had a really good experience watching these fights, and I loved how they utilized the Sphere and how we got to experience that at home. If we talk about the actual fights, we're going to work at the bottom and go up to the top. We started with Raul Rosas Jr. He was a very obvious pick to win this fight, and at no point in this fight did it look like he wasn't going to win. The reality is, though, I don't think he's as good as everybody thinks he is. I don't think he's as good as he thinks he is. He's been saying for a while, now I want to be the youngest UFC champion in history. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. He's only 19 years old. He's got, I think, what was John Jones, 23, 22? So he's got 3 or 4 more years to put it all together, but it's not going to happen. Striking's not great. Takedowns are good, not amazing. Let's say they're very good, not amazing. The jiu-jitsu isn't amazing either. You need to be blowing through people like Aoriqileng. You need to be blowing through him. And yes, it was a dominant win, but it wasn't a murdering. If we go back to Isaac Dulgarian last week, obviously he was a minus 3,000 favorite. He was fighting somebody nowhere near the caliber of Aoriqileng, but Isaac Dulgarian comes in all gas. He shoots a takedown, he picks you up, he slams you down. When he's on top, he's raining down strikes, trying to grab position. That is somebody that can close the gap on his opponents and add pieces. Raul Rosas just shooting to shoot and hanging on to hang on. He is going to continue to win fights, but we need to be very careful because he's not that far away from getting smoked again. Overall, dominant performance, but it was supposed to be. He was what, a minus 800, minus 700 favorite? This was supposed to be a dominant performance, and frankly, I don't think it was as dominant as everybody expected it to be. Then we had what was labeled as fight of the night. When I do these recaps, I'm taking my notes as I'm watching the fight so I don't forget. I get these pictures, I do the captions as I'm watching the fights. And I labeled this fight of the night. And as the night went on, I could have labeled 5 other fights fight of the night. This card, surprisingly, was wildly entertaining. And I say surprising because there was only 10 fights and 8 of them were decisions. 8 of them were decisions. And we had a lot of really good fights, and this was one of them. This was an absolute back and forth, drag 'em out war. Joshua Van had Edgar Chairez dead to rights early. Had that dude 99% unconscious. Just for Edgar Chairez to do a spinning back fist, rock Joshua Van's world, and almost have him knocked out. They both survived. We come back to the second round, more of the same. They both survived, come back to the third round, more of the same. This was an absolute back and forth banger. Both of these gentlemen earned their keep in the UFC. Joshua Van, a great showing. Let us see his chin again after getting knocked out by Charles Johnson. Edgar Chairez had a phenomenal showing. He almost won this fight by finish on more than one occasion. And we saw how insanely durable he is. Ultimately, the issue, Edgar's issue, was what we talked about leading up to this. He's hit way too much. He is just so freaking hittable. And he's moving his body, but somehow his head is just right in front. It's like follows the punch. His head is a magnet to fists. He's way too hittable, but he's a dangerous guy. He's wildly tough, and he's very entertaining. I hope the UFC does him a little bit of a favor, right? I hope they give him someone that he can beat. Don't just throw him at somebody you're trying to build up, because that might be what happens. The UFC might say, hey, Edgar Chairez is fun, and he puts on a show. Let's give him somebody we're trying to build up so that it's a really fun, exciting fight. That other person wins, and people remember this person that we're trying to build as being fun. That honestly is probably what they're going to do. But overall, this ended up being a great fight. And Joshua Van was able to get back into the win column. This is really when I started to come apart at the seams a little bit. Luckily, it all came back together. I ended up being up money. The bets ended up hitting. But this bet specifically screwed me. Screwed me. I fell into my own trap. I broke down this fight. I said Ketlen Souza hits like a freight train. Every single thing that Ketlen Souza does is with 100% power and intent. And I said Yazmin Jauregui can be chinny. I saw it with my own eyes in Las Vegas. I walked into the T-Mobile Arena. I looked up, and Yazmin Jauregui was just falling down after getting dropped. And I said it could happen again. And if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be Ketlen Souza. But I still, because I'm an idiot, I still decided to throw Yazmin Jauregui in the parlay because I was like, she's just better. She's just the better fighter. And I think she can be better everywhere. Turns out she got chinned, dropped, and choked out so bad that she was laying on that canvas in this second picture for a while. Yazmin Jauregui, she's just, you can't be that chinny. You can't be that good of a striker and that chinny in the women's division. It just is what it is. Yazmin, the second time she was a tremendous favorite and got finished in the first round. The second time. We got to be done with her. Ketlen Souza deserves her flowers. Came forward, wasn't afraid to engage with a better striker, landed with big power, and then ultimately choked her wildly unconscious. Then we had my first underdog win on the card. We had Ignacio Bahamondes. At this point in the card, I'm 3-1. The only fight that I lost was Ketlen Souza. I had a good night overall. And this made me feel a little better. I picked Ignacio Bahamondes. I told you to pick Ignacio Bahamondes. I said, I don't know why these odds are so wide. It doesn't make sense to me. And I understand that Manuel Torres is good, and you guys love Manuel Torres, and he looked good. He did look good in this fight. But Manuel Torres relies on his reach. He relies on his length. He relies on being the longer fighter. And that just was never going to happen in this matchup. Not with Ignacio. So we got to see from Ignacio the forward pressure. We got to see the power. And he looked good doing it. Takedowns still suck. They're going to suck for a long time. And it's going to be a problem because when he gets lit up on his feet, he doesn't have a backup plan. Manuel Torres looked good right up until he didn't. Right up until he lost that fight, he looked good. He just could not handle the range, and he needs to be the longer fighter. And anytime we break down Manuel Torres going forward, if he's the longer fighter, I'll pick him. If he's not, we could end up in a situation just like this. But Ignacio Bahamondes looked absolutely fantastic. Crazy long, crazy dangerous. First underdog that won, at least on my picks, of the night. And then we had one of the most gruesome cuts I have ever seen. Remember Gregory Rodriguez? And that split right here, and you saw the throbbing vein? This was like that, but far worse. This picture doesn't do it justice. The cut goes all the way across her nose and down. You could just separate a little bit and basically see her brains. This was one of the most insane cuts. This was my second correct underdog pick of the night in Norma Dumont. I said it, Norma Dumont is big. Norma Dumont is strong. Norma Dumont does a great job keeping people's volume down. And that's kind of what we saw, but not quite. Because Norma Dumont was just counter-striking like crazy. She was turning her head a little bit, bang, and just launching. Norma had more volume than we normally see out of her. Her counter-striking was absolutely phenomenal. Irene Aldana was big, but it didn't bother. Norma just continued to move forward, continued to control. No wrestling out of Norma Dumont, and that was a bit surprising. I thought we would see some cage control, some pace slowing. Ultimately, this cut here was from a headbutt. But when the headbutt did the cut, it was like an inch. It was the 100 jabs and the counter rights that split it wildly open. Norma Dumont is now, I believe, and I'm doing this off the top of my head at 2 o'clock in the morning, I believe Norma Dumont is now on a 5-fight win streak. We got to start talking about a title shot. This belt is on the line in 2 weeks at UFC 307. Depending on how that fleshes out, all of a sudden, Norma Dumont, I imagine, has to be the number one contender. Let me know in the comments who I'm missing. But Norma Dumont just continues to get wins. Are they exciting? This one actually wasn't bad. But no, she's not a finisher. She'll decision people. But this fight, they were throwing down. There was a lot of bud. They were both throwing down. Neither one of them were backing up. We didn't get boring wrestling. This was another very good fight. And this card so far was a spectacular card. Then we had the main card opener. This was another fight of the night style performance. And again, I am filming this at 2 o'clock in the morning, immediately following the event. So I don't know who won fight of the night bonuses. And I know Dana White was adamant after the shit show that was UFC 305, after those absolute trash performances in London. He was like, I'm not upping the bonuses ever again. Don't ask me to do it because it means nothing. Honestly, he should have done it because these guys performed. Every single fighter on this card, outside of the co-main and the main, and we'll talk about it, performed. And these two gentlemen were no different. Osbourne is, I don't know if he's going to get cut. This is his third loss in a row. Hopefully he is not cut because this was an exciting fight. And let's walk through it very quickly. Osbourne had Ronaldo Rodriguez just getting pieced up. He was dominating the striking. He cracked that dude. Ronaldo drops back his head like that dude was out. Ode pops on him, jumps on him, starts raining down, ends up in a triangle position. How the hell Ronaldo got out of that triangle is beyond anybody. The announcers had no clue. The referee had no clue. Nobody had any clue. And good job on the ref because when Ode dropped Ronaldo and Ronaldo was seemingly unconscious, the referee came running in, was about to stop it and didn't. And ultimately, Ronaldo ended up winning the fight. If he did stop it, I don't think there's a single person that would have said it was early. I think everybody would have been like, yeah, it was a good stoppage. That tells you how insanely tough Ronaldo is and how close to being finished he was. But he managed to continue fighting, work his way through this submission, worked his way through a guillotine much later, and he ended up winning. He had Ode in a little bit of trouble late. It was a late takedown that pretty much solidified all of this. Ode's takedown defense needs a shit ton of work. His jiu-jitsu is good. You can see it here. But it's like, I don't know how to explain it because the technique is there, but he doesn't have the flow, if that makes sense. You end up on the ground and you can throw up a triangle that looks really good and it looks really tight. But then you so easily get passed and mounted and controlled. Osbourne looked incredible on his feet. Hopefully the UFC rewards this fight of the night type performance with a matchup against a guy that's going to stay in the feet with him. All the respect in the world to both these guys. But guys, the takeaway here is Ronaldo Rodriguez is not that good. He is very tough, but he's not that good. He was getting his ass kicked. Any decent striker with some takedown defense is going to blow through this dude. So let's remember that going forward. Then we had Jacob's underdog lock of the week in Esteban Ribovics. I was also on Esteban Ribovics, and the last couple of times that I was on an underdog and Jacob was on an underdog and it was Jacob's underdog lock of the week, we cruised. We cruised to victory. This wasn't quite the cruising that some other underdog lock of the weeks have been, but it was still a win and it was a good one at that. This was another absolute banger. And the community didn't really love the Esteban Ribovics kick. The community loved Daniel Zellhuber. I saw a ton of DZ. And I get it. And honestly, watching this fight, I was like, man, he is good. He does a great job with his range. He pieced up Esteban at times. He's insanely tough. Like, he is good. Daniel Zellhuber is good. The problem here was, it was almost similar to Manuel Torres. Not quite as dramatic, but somewhat similar to Manuel Torres, where if Daniel Zellhuber can't control the range, he doesn't love the pressure. And Esteban Ribovics is all pressure. He comes inside the pocket, almost like old school dirty boxing Mike Tyson style, and starts blasting inside the pocket. He's got big power, and he keeps that power late. Daniel Zellhuber won the first round, arguably won the second, very clearly lost the third round. If I'm being honest, I bet on Esteban Ribovics a week ago. I bet on him a week ago. I picked him. I recorded a video. I sat here. I told you to pick him, and I bet on him a full week ago. But I watched that fight and I was like, shit, I don't know if he won. I'm good with the decision because only one of these gentlemen was an inch away from being finished, and that was Daniel Zellhuber. So I'm fine with Esteban Ribovics winning. He was constantly moving forward. He almost finished the fight more than one time. The third round was just basically Daniel Zellhuber. I don't know how. He was like a marionette. I don't know how he was staying up because that dude was getting blasted. So I'm good with Esteban Ribovics winning, but if I was a judge, I'm not sure how I would have scored it. I'm curious what you guys think. I didn't see a lot of robbery. I didn't see a lot of that bullshit. I did see a lot of like, holy shit, Jacob did it again. And it is astonishing what Jacob is doing, just picking a single underdog every single week. But either way, Daniel Zellhuber is very, very good. There's only so many wars like this he can be in before he starts talking and looking like Tony Ferguson. But he's still a young guy, and for now, as long as he doesn't get hit as much or as hard as he did in this fight, he's going to have a great career. Esteban Ribovics, his ability to close distance, even though he's a shorter guy, his ability to crack inside the pocket, wildly, wildly impressive. And then we had the last good fight of the night. It all went to shit from here. This was the last good fight of the night. Diego Lopes beat the shit out of Brian Ortega. He beat the piss out of this dude. And I'm about to go on a Joe Rogan rant any second now. But he beat the piss out of him. The fight started within the first 30 seconds. Diego Lopes just boom, bang, and Brian Ortega on his back fighting for his life. Diego Lopes pounced, landed some huge shots, and Brian Ortega's a seasoned veteran at this point. He's grabbing wrists, he's pulling down, he's tying up, he's controlling the situation. And Diego, in my opinion, spent a little bit too long messing around with the ground game. Ultimately, he wised up, he stood up, he walked away and said, all right, let's go. Couple of things. One, he kept doing this, and this is me asking you, what the hell was that? He kept kept resetting to touch his neck to the point where when he was standing over Brian Ortega landed a couple of monster up kicks. And I was like, did he mess up his esophagus? Is it his chin? Why does he keep reaching his hand back? And I am curious, is it a nervous tick that I didn't notice in his previous fights? Or did something happen that he kept messing with his throat and his chin and going back? I don't know. That's a question to you. But here's the reality of the Brian Ortega situation. He's insanely tough, but not great. I was going to say not very good, and then you guys are going to come for my head because everybody gets so fucking sensitive about their favorite fighters. Brian Ortega got the piss beat out of him by Yair Rodriguez. Pulled off the win at the last minute. He got the piss beat out of him in this fight. Couldn't pull off the win at the last minute. I think the sport's just passing him by. He hasn't improved. Despite the bullshit that was coming out of Joe Rogan's mouth, Brian Ortega has not improved. And I say that because Joe Rogan just would not shut the hell up about Brian Ortega's striking looks great. Brian Ortega looks really good striking here. Brian Ortega with a great cut. Brian Ortega was dropped in every round. In the first round, he was 99% unconscious, and you're going to go on and on about how good his striking looked? In the second round, he got kicked in the leg so many times, it swelled up like a balloon, it dropped him on his ass. And we're going to talk about how good his striking looked? In the third round, he yet again was dropped and almost finished, and Joe Rogan's talking about how good his striking looked. I love Joe Rogan because I have seen every single UFC when it aired. I've seen every UFC from UFC 1 watching at my cousin's house as a little kid on the D-Scrambler in Queens. So the Joe Rogan voice is loaded with nostalgia for me. Like the greatest era of UFC with the Tito Ortizes of the world. Tito versus Chuck. And I have that in my brain and I hear Joe Rogan, I get excited. And then I hear the words and I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? He did the same thing on multiple fights, and this is not the first time we've talked about this. He gets like opinions in his head, and he can't pivot from that. It was like on his note card, Brian Ortega's striking is improved. And he just wouldn't leave that, even though this dude's getting beaten and battered on his feet. That's the end of that rant. Diego Lopes looked good. How good is he, though? He very clearly has cardio issues. Very clearly. He also looked very, very uncomfortable later in this fight. And I don't know if something happened. Maybe it had something to do with the neck scratching. Was he hurt? I don't know. But he started to look more and more uncomfortable as the fight went on. He started to slow down as the fight went on. He's a tremendous dude, but he is young. His cardio should be phenomenal now. So I don't know how good Diego Lopes is. All right, let's put it this way. I do know how good he is. His skills are all there. His hands are improving. His jiu-jitsu is spectacular. So the skills, I know how good he is. I don't know how far he'll go because he may have some cardio issues. I'm very curious to see what they do next. If he fights another Movsar Evloev, somebody that will just come forward, stay in your face, not worry about what comes back their way, wrestle you, make you work, he's going to continue to lose that matchup every time. Then we had a turning point fight. Every single fight that I have broken down before this point was exciting. I had people in my house watching the fights that don't typically come over to watch fights. And they were like, I don't watch a ton of UFC, but this is great. And I literally said, this is a phenomenal card. They're not always this good. Then we go back upstairs, and this was the next fight. And it was not good. It was exactly what Valentina Shevchenko needed to do. And it was so obvious. And I slapped myself around realizing how obvious this was. Because what was every single breakdown this week? Every single breakdown was talking about how Valentina beat the shit out of Alexa Grasso their first fight and then got caught when she did the spinning back kick. Talked about how I specifically think that she won the second fight. So why would I not pick her in the third fight? And I should have, in hindsight's 2020. Ultimately, I felt like the skill gaps were closing. I felt like Valentina has been the same person for a few years, and Alexa has been improving and closing that gap. And I still think that's the case. Valentina didn't look any different in this fight than she did in their first fight a year and a half ago. No different. She didn't look any better anywhere. Alexa looked worse everywhere. So great for Valentina. She earned her belt back, but she fought this fight the same way she did the first fight. She looked no different. I challenge you to tell me what was improved about Valentina. Where did she look? Did she look faster? Did she look stronger than usual? Was her striking more accurate than usual? Did she add any new tools? No, she looked exactly the same in this fight as she did in the last fight and as she did in the first time they fought. The only difference was Alexa didn't do shit. Didn't do shit. She was gun shy on the feet, wouldn't let her hands go. On the ground, she chased a few Hail Mary submissions. The crowd was cheering. There were moments where we were like, but ultimately they weren't there. And that was it. So Valentina Shevchenko came forward and just big sistered a very tentative Alexa Grasso. So Valentina reaffirms herself as one of the greatest fighters in this division, if not the greatest fighter in this division's history. Now the question becomes, what the hell was up with Alexa Grasso? Where were the strikes? Why was she not striking? Her sprawls were insane. She would throw her hips back, which is what you're supposed to do, but she would end up flat on the mat. Valentina would shoot a half a takedown, and Alexa Grasso looks like she's doing a Superman move on the mat itself. Overreacting, over-sprawling, not letting her hands go, on the ground, not looking to create scrambles to get up, but only looking to tie up and do some jiu-jitsu off her back. I thought that was a terrible outing by Alexa Grasso, and I think every single person that she fights from this moment forward is just going to look to wrestle her. That's it. I don't know if there was an issue coming into this fight. I don't know if she's lacking confidence, but it looked like she was lacking confidence. She didn't look like somebody who trusted her hands. She didn't look like somebody who knew, I can win this fight. I've won this fight before. I'll win it again. She looked like somebody who was afraid to get pushed around, and she got pushed around. So I don't know what that means for Alexa. I do know that Valentina won this fight, and I don't want to see this fight again. So let's see who Valentina fights next. This might be another start of a 4-year reign. And she's no younger than she was before. So this was a very boring, miserable fight to watch, but very interesting circumstances. And something's up. I don't know what the hell was up, but something's up. And then obviously we had the main event of the evening. This fight was always going to go one direction or the other. There was never going to be an in-between. There was never going to be a dogfight. It was either going to be complete domination by Merab or a knockout by Sean O'Malley. There was no in-between, which is why I did not bet on this fight. Because I was like, you can't bet on this fight. At least not me. Because I can see both sides of a fight. I could see how Sean O'Malley would step off and blast in the same way he did Aljo. I would see how Merab Dvalishvili would move forward and do exactly what he ended up doing. So you couldn't really bet the round line if you weren't positive, because if Sean O'Malley won, it was early, and if Merab won, it was late. Couldn't really bet the money line for those exact same reasons. And for a guy, me, who has wrestled his whole life and tends to pick wrestlers in fighting matchups, I also fell into the trap of Sean O'Malley. This wasn't as bad as Alexa Grasso. Sean O'Malley was tentative. He did not let his hands go. But I get it. Because he was taken down aggressively when he did let his hands go. Literally when he did. The one time he sat down on a big right, Merab was like, whoop, took him down instantly. Okay, fine. He couldn't throw leg kicks because he threw a leg kick, boom, taken down. Okay, fine. But in that 5th round, he blasted Merab right here in the sternum, the solar plex, blasted him with an up kick. And Merab visibly was like, oh shit. Started covering it, blocking it, circling, running away. And Sean still wasn't letting loose. Still one punch at a time. Sean was the better striker by far. We expected that. But what I'll never understand with these very good strikers that are fighting these dominant wrestlers is I don't understand why they don't pressure. I don't get that. Like, yes, you're worried about being taken down. And you know what? In the first round, okay. But the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, at that point, you must know I'm going to be taken down. It's going to happen. Instead of waiting for it, instead of trying to defend it, which I have not been able to do yet, I need to plant and let my hands go. And I need to try to win this fight. At no point did it look like Sean O'Malley was trying to win the fight. It looked like he was trying not to get taken down. Now, of course, there were a few exchanges where Sean had some success. But he didn't seem to be the one moving forward, charging forward. Obviously, when the fight started, Sean O'Malley came at him, came right at him. And then we had a couple of very bizarre incidents in this fight. The first of which, and it was hard to tell, like we literally were looking at each other, what the hell is going on here? Was right in the beginning. Sean O'Malley, the fight just started. We're 5 seconds in. He's running forward. And Merab all of a sudden is stopping. Stop. We didn't know what the hell it was. It felt like, oh, I don't have my mouthpiece. Oh, I don't have my cup. Like, it felt like he forgot of a piece of equipment or something. It made no sense. Herb Dean stops them, yells at him, yells at the corner, and it sounded like Merab was talking shit to Sean O'Malley's corner. And then later in the fight, Herb Dean yells at Sean O'Malley's corner and gives him a warning for talking shit. They clarify in the broadcast that it was called overcoaching. I don't have a rule book in front of me. I don't know what that means. But apparently he was overcoaching. What the hell is that? First of all, these are grown men locked in a cage, fist fighting. Who cares what they say? Who gives a shit what they or their teams say? Who cares? Who cares? And I know the theory, or what Sean O'Malley's team was trying to tell the world is, hey, when we fought Aljo, my coach yelled, get him, Aljo, rush in. And that's when Aljo rushed in and I knocked him out. We tricked Aljo into thinking that his corner told him to do that. But so what? So what? If you can coach the other side into doing wrong shit, so what? It's like a coaching rope-a-dope. This is a bizarre situation. I don't know what the hell the rule says, and I don't care what it says. Who gives a shit what you're yelling? Who cares? This is a fist fight. And if your corner wants to waste their time yelling bullshit instead of advice, let them. If you want to waste your time yelling at a corner instead of fighting the man in front of you, that's your choice. What the hell was Herb Dean doing? None of that made any sense. Then there was a whole bunch of criticism later in the fight with Herb Dean demanding that they work. Meanwhile, Merab was nothing but 100% forward pressure this entire fight. Work. You got to work. Motherfucker, Merab was working harder than anybody we've ever seen work in that octagon before. And the funniest part about all of that is there was an exchange, I don't know if it was in the first round or the second. Again, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm doing this off memory. Where Merab had gotten a takedown over Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley snuck his fingers into Merab's glove on bottom. Herb Dean saw it, stopped the action, warned Sean, reset them. Perfect job. And the announcers were like, Herb Dean, this is why Herb Dean's the best in the business. Not 10 minutes later, they're like, what is he doing? Well, how could he tell them action? This makes no sense. What is Herb Dean doing? He's losing. He should not. It's just so funny how quickly that pendulum turns. Overall, I thought it was a good event. I'm fine with how the main event went. Was it the most exciting? No. But that's how it was going to be if Merab won. At least he did shit and was pressuring forward, had nice takedowns, worked on top. Valentina didn't do anything with her takedowns, but I blame Alexa for that. You're the champ. Figure out how to keep your belt. Guys, that's the breakdown. That's what I thought about these fights. Let me know in the comments what you thought. Just a reminder, made some money tonight. Premium membership did pretty well. And if you want to unlock premium membership for UFC Paris, you can do so now. It is $10 for an entire month. UFC Paris, UFC 307, the fight night after that, all of those events are included for just $10 a month. WeWantPicks.com, click Become a Member. You will get the bets, which again, we're up tonight. But you also get tools. One of those tools is the data analyzer. It's going to give you a data set for every single fighter on every single card. And I think we're all the way out to 309. Then you're going to get a full tape index and everything you could ever need on this one tool. We also have a prop hunter. This is a curated set of data specifically designed to help you find prop bets. We have the line movement tracker. This is going to give you the opening odds, the current odds, the win probability, and line movement for every fighter on every card. And then obviously we have the DraftKings optimizer that will build DraftKings lineups for you. It'll build up to 150 lineups with a couple clicks of the button. And don't forget, it's not just me here. We got Jacob breaking down fights, giving you those underdog lock of the weeks. We have Artem giving you PFL, LFA, Contender Series picks and bets. And then we have an artificial intelligence picking bets solely off of historical data. Every single thing I just mentioned, a million other things that I didn't. $10 a freaking month. WeWantPicks.com. Click Become a Member at the top.